Is there something out there among us that pretends to be us and mimics us, but is not human? Is it something extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or is it something supernatural? And is it something that has been living among us for thousands of years, and is it possibly even sinister? What do these beings who are among us want? Where do they come from, and what is their aim? Tim Swartz joins me to talk about his new book, Mimics, The Others Among Us, on this episode of Passion for the Paranormal. Well, greetings, fellow truth seekers, and welcome once again to Passion for the Paranormal, bringing a passion for the paranormal to you. I'm your host, Curry Stegan, and it's really good to be back here with you once again. And in my new book, Walking in the Shadows of Strangers, I recount my journey, close to 10 years investigating the paranormal at over 20 haunted locations. There's some really great locations I talk about in the book. And I also share some really good ghost stories that others have shared with me over the years. And I also talk about where I came out at the other end of this, and that is more spiritually open and more open to some of these other types of phenomena that I cover in this show, and that is things like near-death experiences, reincarnation, past lives, and a whole bunch more. So I really hope you'll check out the new book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get the Kindle version. If you have a Kindle Unlimited account, you can pick up a copy for free, or you can order the paperback version on Amazon as well. Or you can head over to the website at passion4theparanormal.com. And you can find a link there, and you can also catch up with some past episodes. I've also been a guest on several podcasts recently. Great shows like The Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, Strange Planet with Richard Syrett, and I was also a recent guest on the Paracast with Gene Steinberg and Tim Swartz, who is also on the show tonight. We're going to be talking about his book. So you can also find links to my guest appearances on all those other shows where I'm talking about the new book in my journey into the paranormal. So really hope you're going to like tonight's show. I think it's going to be a good one in talking with Tim. Just real quick, whatever podcast app you're using out there, make sure you're following us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, take a minute or two and offer a rating and review of the show. I'd really appreciate that. Give us some feedback. And so without further ado, I'm really eager to get into the discussion with Tim and talk about his new book, Mimics, The Others Among Us. Sounds like a really fascinating book, and I think it's really going to be an interesting discussion. So I really hope you're going to enjoy it, and thank you so much for tuning into the show. Okay, so joining me tonight is Tim Swartz. And Tim is an Emmy-Award winning television producer and videographer, and he is the author of a number of books, including The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, America's Strange and Supernatural History, UFO Repeaters, Time Travel, Fact, Not Fiction, Men of Mystery, Nikola Tesla, and many others. As a photojournalist, Tim has traveled extensively, investigated paranormal phenomena, and other unusual mysteries from such diverse locations as the Great Pyramids and the Great Wall in China. He has also appeared on a number of TV shows, including History Channel's programs The Tesla Files, Ancient Aliens Evidence, and Ancient Aliens Declassified. He is co-author of the new book Mimics, The Others Among Us, which we're going to talk about tonight. His articles have been published in numerous magazines such as Mysteries, Fate, Strange, Atlanta Rising, UFO Universe, Flying Saucer Review, Renaissance, and Unsolved UFO Reports. Currently, Tim writes a column about high strangeness in Indiana for the magazine Day Drifter. As well, Tim is the writer and the editor of the online newsletter Conspiracy Journal, a free weekly email newsletter considered essential reading by paranormal researchers worldwide. Tim is also the host of the webcast Exploring the Bizarre, along with Timothy Green Beckley, and also co-hosts the famous Paracast radio and podcast show with Gene Steinberg. Tim, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Hey, thanks, Curry. I appreciate you having me on. I should say I no longer unfortunately, do exploring the bizarre since my old partner in crime, Timothy Green Beckley, passed away and caught a ride on the mothership a couple of years ago. So now it's just me and Gene Steinberg on the Paracast.
Sorry to hear about Timothy, and it's quite a resume you have there, Tim. You're involved in a number of different projects and shows, and you're appearing on TV shows as well. Ancient Aliens. It's quite an impressive resume. So sounds like you keep pretty busy doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's amazing sometimes, I don't even bother anymore to try to record what I do daily because then I would be spending all my time just doing that, rather doing the things that I should be doing.
Sure. Yeah, and it sounds like you do get to spend quite a great deal of time doing those things you like to do as well. And that's great because it sounds like you like to talk about a lot of the same things I like to talk about. And that's the kind of unusual and unexplained and the paranormal and UFOs and all those kind of great things. So, but we're here to talk about a little bit about the new book and sounds like a really interesting one. I've kind of breezed through it a little bit, didn't get a chance to, read it extensively. But the title again is Mimics, the Others Among Us. And so maybe talk about one, how you, and now you've got a co writer on this book. Talk about the co writer who joined you to write this book.
Right. Well, besides myself, there's Sean Casteel, but we also have a bunch of contributing writers as well, and all of us, we were people who worked with the late Timothy Green Beckley and his books and magazines and research and everything like that. So that's how we all got to know each other. So after Tim Beckley passed away, I just decided that I was going to try to, keep the ball rolling and start producing books like Beckley's Interlight Global Communications publishing house did. So I got together, especially with Sean Casteel, uh, to just kind of work out what kind of books that we enjoy doing with Mr. Beckley and what kind of books seem to resonate as well with our readers. So we actually, Sean Casteel and myself, we had already had several books in the process of being written and produced with Mr. Beckley before he passed away. So we finished those and actually had them released through his publishing company with the help of his relatives who are still trying to go through everything that he had. He had an apartment in Manhattan, and it was a small apartment, but it was crammed full with years and years of his work. So after we got those books out of the way, and the last one was called Alien Artifacts, which turned out to be a really good book and very popular with her readers as well. So now Mimics the Others Among Us is our first, I suppose, original book outside of what we did with Mr. Beckley, myself and Sean Casteel. So then we brought in then people like Scott Corrales, Paul Eno, Chris Holly, Hercules Invictus. I'm going to name them all here for you. Philip Kinsella, Brent Rains, Paul Dale Roberts, Gene Steinberg from the Paracast, Lon Strickler, Nigel Watson, and John Weigel. So, if your listeners are familiar with these people, you know that you're in for a good time ahead when you read this book, because all of us, when the idea was first introduced to them, I was just really excited because this is a fascinating subject that I don't think, and none of them really either, had really been fully addressed. Maybe bits and pieces of the phenomena here and there, but we kind of tried to bring them all together and to I don't want to say a grand unified field theory because that's something we're still working on with all of this, but just brought these stories together with some of our ideas and present them to our readers to open their own minds to this very fascinating and eerie phenomena.
Yeah, so just based on the title, it sounds like we are probably talking about others who live among us who may not be human. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. If you go and do your research throughout history, humans have had interactions with other intelligence who have guided us, tricked us, given us information, taken information away, and we've given them names like, gods, demigods, angels, demons, fairies, and now in modern times, extraterrestrials. But it seems like they're all maybe kind of the same thing, just using different faces as time goes by. But as you know, as we get into this conversation, Curry, you'll find that the phenomena is very diverse, kind of like the UFO phenomena, and extremely difficult to try to pin down.
Right. Yeah, I think I like to use the term, going down the rabbit hole because you can easily, on many of these kind of unexplained phenomena, you can easily find yourself going down the rabbit hole pretty deeply as you kind of start to peel that onion back, if you will. And You already mentioned the UFO subject. I think when I was on your show, we talked a bit about the alien abduction phenomena, and that's another one you can go pretty deep into the rabbit hole. But I'm kind of always interested in how unexplained phenomena may be connected, where there
Mm.
may be a nexus. And so it sounds like this is kind of where you're trying to tie it all in, maybe to a certain degree. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I mean, the idea is that humanity probably is not alone on this planet, that there probably are other intelligent beings that have been with us right from the very beginning. Now, you know, who they are, what they are, that's the big question, and as I've stated in the book, I don't think that we're dealing with, say, just one type of, intelligence or creatures or what have you, but possibly just there's a whole myriad of things going on that may be just superficially related to each other, or like I said, everything is kind of combined under one roof. The original idea for this book, this has been something that I've been mulling over for a number of years. I mean, it goes all the way back when I was a kid, and you used to be able to go to the drugstore, and they would sell great paperback books, uh, and a lot of paranormal related books. Some of my favorite authors I discovered buying paperback books at the drugstore. Um, and there was one that I came across. It was called Our Haunted Planet by John Keel. And there is the beginning of a section in that book called Mimics of Man. And John actually used this idea. I mean, he just really, it was just a couple of paragraphs. And then he used that as kind of a jumping off point to other stories, maybe related, maybe not so much related. But those few paragraphs really stuck to me because John kind of speculated, and who knows if he was serious about it or not, that there could be mimics of man that live amongst us. And his idea with this was kind of almost like a physical creature that looked like us, acted like us, but wasn't human. And he related a number of things in nature that we know about. There's all kinds of different creatures that will mimic other creatures either to prey on them or to not be preyed on them. And that just always intrigued me, that in this day and age, we've pretty much eliminated most of the major predators on the planet. I mean, we don't, most of us, don't have to worry about going out of our front door and get eaten by a tiger. So if we don't have those kind of predators around anymore, would it be possible that there could be something else that is a lot more intelligent, a lot more, canny, living amongst us, yeah, like along the lines of, say, a hermit, or just, the people who live in their parents' basement. No, no, I'm just teasing about that. Um, but that's that's just one concept, Curry, because the phenomena itself, while there are reports that it's very obvious that we're dealing with physical creatures. I mean, the paranormal aspect comes right in very hot and heavy on a lot of these cases as well. So that's what leads me to believe that we may be dealing with all kinds of different things. But again, it goes back to the main concept that there are things on this planet with us that either look like us already, could maybe a related species, maybe interdimensional, what have you. And then there are things that could be shapeshifters. That's a very popular subject right now. You've got the whole Skinwalker Ranch, shape shifter type of thing. And so that's where we're going in this book. And like you said, there's all kinds of layers to be peeled back, and we've only managed to peel back just a little bit. So, and of course, as soon as the book is finished and published, then I start running across all kinds of news stories that I'm like, oh man, that would have been perfect for the
So
book.
so so perhaps there's a volume 2 in order?
Possibly. We'll see how well this book does and the kind of response. I mean, so far we're really getting just a great response, because again, like yourself, once people start thinking about this concept and maybe going back to other cases that they've heard about, they're like, yeah, I can see this. So, who knows? Volume 2, I mean, that's always a possibility.
Yeah, so, Tim, true to form, I always have to kinda get a little bit of backstory on my guests. So, you've been writing and delving into this stuff for a long time. Did any of it Were there strange, experiences you had yourself that led you into this, or what really led you ultimately into writing and, talking about this stuff and appearing on TV and radio?
Well, what originally got me interested in all this was, when I was a kid and in school, we used to get a thing called, the weekly news, and it came from Scholastic books. And it was a news aggregate, like a newspaper, of all the week's big headlines, and it was given out for free to classrooms. And when we would get this paper, the teacher would usually assign a story to everyone. Each person would have a different story, and you were supposed to write a little, essay about it and then present it in front of the class. Just trying to keep kids aware and starting to be knowledgeable about world events. One time, I got a story about flying saucers, And, this would have been about third grade. I had no idea what flying saucers were. I was interested in science. I liked, rockets and things like that. But, being a boy from Indiana, I was more interested in like, race cars and basketball and things like that. But, after I gave my report, that was it. I was pegged by everyone as being the flying saucer guy. I was the guy who believed in, little green men from Mars and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, everybody has to have, some albatross uh, on their neck. What what ended up being really interesting to me is that, people would make fun of you. There's the guy who believes in, men from Mars. But then later they'd come back when there's nobody else around and they would say, I don't believe in this stuff, but, and then they'd proceed to tell me stories, their family saw a UFO when they were on vacation, or they saw their, great grandmother appear next to the bed, even though that she had died a week before. Stories like that. And that's what really drew me into this. The stories were great. The stories are fascinating, but it was the people who had these experiences, and there were a lot of them too. But most people have no desire to publicize their experiences. They have no desire really to tell anyone because I know they'll just get laughed at. But still, people want to know what's going on, and I would say that practically everybody in their life one time or another has had some kind of unusual experience that most of us will just either ignore or try to rationalize it somehow and then forget about it. But we all have like that filing system in our brain that compartmentalizes everything. You get up in the morning, you eat breakfast, you go to work, you come home, go to bed, do it all over again. That's in that little filing system in your brain. Very familiar with that. But say you're going to work one day and this UFO lands in front of you, and these little gray guys come out and start collecting rocks and plants and things and get back in and fly away. Where do you put that in your brain? Most people aren't interested in this kind of stuff and only really have a superficial knowledge of it. So after you've had, an experience like that, and that you've had an experience like that, you can't deny it. Where do you put that in your brain? Where do you compartmentalize that? And that really messes a lot of people up for a long time,
Right.
in their life, because they can't explain it. They can't talk about it with anyone because they know they'll just be made fun of. So, I've had people come to me over the years to tell me these stories, and a lot of times it'll be like, I don't want you to tell anybody else, but I have to tell you. And then they'll tell me their story, and they just want to know that they're not crazy. They want to know that other people have had these same experiences. And that's what I tell them. I said, "Yeah, I've heard about this kind of story, before. No, you're not crazy. Other people have had it as well." And you could see the weight lifted off of their shoulders, and they walk away. They may never ever tell anybody else again, but now they have some kind of validation that
Right.
they had an actual experience.
Yeah.
And that's, see, over all these years, that has just really been the part that has drew me in and has kept me going, is all of these experiences from people who aren't after to make a buck or to fool somebody. They've had something weird, and I want to know also, what is that weird thing that happened to you? What's that weird thing that happens to all of us at some time in our life?
Right. So, do you feel? I think kind of what you were alluding to, though, is we're kind of preconditioned to kind of file this stuff away, right? I mean, do you still think that's the case even today? That a lot of people, even if they do have a strange experience, they kind of sometimes just want to, maybe, like you said, either compartmentalize it or just talk themselves out of it, or just kind of pretend that it didn't happen.
Oh, definitely. definitely. I mean, I've had people who um, say have had either like a ghostly, let's just say like a ghostly experience where there'll be a number of them, and maybe a couple people in the group will acknowledge that yes, this actually happened, and then others will just refuse to talk about it, and deny anything ever happened. And I mean, I've seen friendships actually break up because somebody is so, I guess, freaked out by their experience that they want to avoid thinking about it completely. And in order to do that, a lot of times they'll cut off contact with others who have had the same experience at the same time. So and I think that's a natural reaction to something unknown. I mean, you've seen people who have been, say, been part of an accident or some kind of violence where some of them will want to talk about it and others just want to avoid it and forget about it completely. And so you see the same thing happening when it comes to paranormal or other types of unusual phenomena. The problem is that unlike somebody who's had, say, like, a bad car accident or been involved in, some kind of violent crime, you've got people that you can talk to about it. But a lot of times, if you try to approach, say, a therapist and say, it really bugs me that, I saw my dead mother coming down the stairs, they'll like, okay, 72 hours in the hospital for you. It's extremely hard to find somebody
Right.
who's knowledgeable enough to talk about a situation like that and just doesn't automatically um, checkmark crackpot, on
Right.
on your list.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe that's changing a little bit, or do you feel like that the conversation's opening up about this stuff a bit?
it is a little bit, and a lot of that has to do with the popularity of a lot of these reality television shows, about ghost researchers and Bigfoot hunters and things like that. But again, it's a niche type of audience. So I mean, you may have a household that's very familiar with these kind of things, while the people next door have never even heard of Bigfoot or flying saucers or things like that. So thanks to the internet, there is more knowledge out there on these subjects. But again, it's still niche, and a lot of people, if they do have any knowledge on the subject, it tends to be extremely superficial and kind of like the low hanging fruit type of knowledge with these stories.
Right. And still seems to be some stigma attached either way, even if the conversation may be opening up a little bit. So, I mean, I think you're always going to have some of that. So, I want to get back to the book a little bit here. There is a section in there where you talk about the black eyed kids.
Hmm.
David Weatherly's talked about Black Eyed Kids. I've had Gary Michael Vassie on the show quite some time ago, who joined me and talked about the Black Eyed Kids. What's your take on how this may tie into the book and the story about the mimics?
Well, sure. Well, the Black Eyed Kids is a perfect example of what we're closely examining in this book, because you have got things, beings, whatever, that are human in appearance, act like humans, but for for most people, the feeling is that they're not. And again, that is, the one of the major points of this book, and one of the big questions is why? Why human? Why the human shape? Are we somehow anthropomorphizing whatever this is and seeing humans where there could be something else, or what? But that's the question that I'll throw out there to everyone. Why the human shape? Why the human appearance throughout history? And again, if you're dealing with something that is say, paranormal or extraterrestrial or interdimensional, you could have all kinds of different shapes and sizes and, looking like animals or dragons. I mean, and we do have reports of things like that as well, all these cryptid sightings, but the human form is very, very popular and is almost universal with these experiences. So now with the black-eyed kids, it's a fascinating subject, because if this were happening, and maybe it did, 200 years ago, people would probably say, you're dealing with vampires, because the one main point about the black-eyed kids encounters is that these things appear on your doorstep or outside of your car or whatever, and ask permission to come in your car, come in your house. They can't do anything unless you give them permission. And that harks right back to the old stories of the vampires, where your dead relative would come and appear outside the window of your bedroom and call your name. And if you answered or then gave permission to come in, then, you're easy prey. So you're seeing this once again with the whole black-eyed kid phenomena. If you were, say, a Chinese peasant, you would probably say that these were hungry ghosts, as they were called. They're kind of like their equivalent of vampires. So, there have been a few stories that I've never been able to actually vet uh, very well, of people who say that they've actually let these things in, and then, like their pets died, a spouse died, all kinds of bad things happen. I've yet to really confirm that those types of stories are true. Most of the time, and you'll find this throughout the book in other cases, even before people get a look at the black eyes of these kids, they'll just have an overwhelming fear. They'll be overtaken by this fear. In fact, some people report that they feel like that they're in the presence of a predator, that they're going to be eaten somehow by these kids. And most of the time, they're fairly normal looking kids. A lot of times, wearing hoodies, and maybe the clothes will look somewhat out of date, and maybe the kids will look a little dirty. But most people will confirm that they look like regular kids until they get a good look at their eyes, and the eyes are black. And again, we go back through all kinds of mythologies of dangerous supernatural beings with black eyes that prey on us. So are we seeing a continuation of things that used to prey on us thousands of years ago, when we were still living in the caves, and would come, knocking on the cave door when the fire went out, asking to be let in? Uh, so it's just always fascinating how so many of these types of cases, you can also find ancient similar cases. And it just seems like that whatever these things are, they have the ability to take on the guise of whatever the current belief system is. And, with the black-eyed kids, there's been a lot of speculation that it has something to do with the UFO phenomena. And the UFO phenomenon really has kind of become the 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 all be it all do it type of situation with a lot of these cases. And that's because people don't believe in vampires or gods or angels anymore, but the idea that physical beings from other planets are visiting us, that's scientific, and so that sounds a little bit more acceptable. And a lot of times, with these cases, whatever these things are, they're all too willing to take on that guise. and act out the part. It wouldn't surprise me if down the line, if the black-eyed kid phenomena continues, that they don't start claiming that they're extraterrestrials. Let us in. Our flying saucer crashed. We need to use your phone to call home.
Right.
That hasn't happened yet, but it wouldn't surprise me because I think that more and more people would be more willing to let these things into their house if they think that they're entertaining aliens from another planet.
Okay, but what about you often hear the demonic label associated with these as well? Could they be demonic? Could they be interdimensional?
Well, okay, what's the difference? What is demonic? What is interdimensional or extraterrestrial? 1,000 years ago, people were taught that anything out of the ordinary um, was from Satan, was from the devil. Well, these are fallen angels who are trying to lead you away from God and the church. Um,
Right, we're being deceived. Yes.
right, we're being deceived. So, we still see that same kind of game being played out, but again, I mean, you still have people who believe in demons and devils and things like that, and in some of these cases, that's the game that ends up being played, almost like a self-confirming prophecy. I'll use for an example, a lot of poltergeist cases. If a house is experiencing a poltergeist, if the people inside and sometimes the investigators, while they're looking at the case, start talking about certain aspects of the phenomena, like, well, this could be demonic, then the poltergeist is very happy to start taking on that role. You'll start to find, crucifixes in the house turned upside down, Bibles burnt, things like that. So I think that a part of this phenomena is listening to us somehow and is ready. There's that trickster type of quality to it, and then it becomes ready to play whatever that game is. If most people live with a poltergeist phenomenon, because most of the time it usually burns out after a few months. Sometimes it'll last longer than that, but for most cases it just burns out after a couple of months. If people approach it with, well, this is weird, but we're not going to let it get to us, then I think that kind of saps the energy from it. And it's the same way with a lot of these cases, like the black-eyed kids and some of the other more intrusive cases of the others, as we call them. That if you provide energy to them, then that gives them more reality, more power, But as soon as you stop providing that energy, and this is something that Paul Eno, one of our writers, talks about quite a bit. You stop providing that energy, then it eventually goes away.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I've always wondered if I've been involved in the paranormal for a number of years. I often wonder if the energy you bring in is the energy you attract. So it kind of seems like that's along the same lines.
Yeah, very much so. And it's we see this also with the UFO phenomena when because uh, there's a lot of cases where people will see something weird in the sky and that'll be it. All right, nothing else ever happens. But then there are some people who will have an unusual experience like that, and it's like it opens up the floodgates to other types of paranormal phenomena. That's where you start seeing the appearance of the others in the form of, say, like Men in Black, or just weird people in general that come knocking on your door, claiming to be taking surveys or wanting to take pictures of the family and stuff like that. But there's always something off with these people. They could be extremely tall, have very robotic types of mannerisms, don't seem to be aware of social cues, or even how to handle things like Jello or coffee properly. Weird things like that. But and the confounding thing about this phenomena with the mimics, the others, is that it can happen without any kind of catalyst to start it up. And what I mean is, you don't necessarily have to have, say, like a UFO experience or some kind of paranormal experience to receive visits from these things, or to see, one on the streets or something. Sometimes it just happens. So I don't know if there are people who are just maybe have latent psychic abilities to be able to see these things, or to attract these things, and under the right conditions that happens. I don't know. That again, that's one of the things that we talk about in this book, that it's kind of for the reader to then go off and explore for themselves. It's a mystery.
Right. So yeah, you just mentioned the Men in Black. There's, similar to the Black Eyed Kids, there's different theories and perhaps explanations for what they could be. In the book, have you kind of reached more of I guess, have you leaned in more in one direction than the other when it comes to the Men in Black and what the origin could be, and kind of maybe take us into what you've explored on the Men in Black for the book?
Well, we do think, and this is, I mean, for my own, years of experience, though never had any visits from the Men in Black. Um, there are probably, in some of these cases, actually dealing with physical human beings, say from intelligence service or the military or what have you, or even people who are part of, say, like a UFO research group, who just want to make them make themselves look cool by dressing all in black and wearing the fedoras and things like that, just to get a rise out of people. But then there are other cases where there seems to be that paranormal slash supernatural attributes to them. They'll appear on your doorstep, ask to be let in, and a lot of people will say afterwards, "I don't know why I let them in. Under normal circumstances, I would never let strangers into my house, but I just threw open the door and invited them in to sit my couch, and serve them lemonade, and let them talk while I sit there and listen." Kind of like the Black Eyed Kids, because a lot of people report that for moments when the kids are asking to be let in, it's almost like they're hypnotized and like, "Sure, come on in." But then at the last moment, that fear builds up in them, and it's like, "No way, go away." But with a lot of these Men in Black, and I use the name Men in Black, but there's been a lot of cases as well where it's just, like I said, seemingly normal looking people, with weird attributes will appear. So I don't know. I mean, I think that there are several elements at play here. The actual physical people from various groups looking into the UFO phenomena. But then again, there is that, and you realize I'm using the word paranormal as kind of a catch-all for things that we just don't quite understand. down the road we may have a better understanding of our reality and the universe around it. But I think that some of these things could actually be um, other intelligence that live on our planet, either physically or, for want of a better term, from maybe a slightly different reality or vibrational plane, or you can throw out all kinds of different names or words, but maybe aren't part of our reality a lot of the times, but can drift in and out somehow for whatever reason. And I realize that me saying that is very unsatisfying to a lot of listeners and readers who want concrete explanations. This is the truth. This is what
Right.
is actually going on. But I can't say that. None of us can say that. If you have somebody who says that they know the truth, then go the other way, because nobody knows the truth yet. And right now, we're throwing rocks in the dark, hoping to hit something or some things that'll provide us with an explanation. But I have to admit that we bring all these cases together in this book, but we have no idea what's actually going on.
Yeah, and it's kind of Tim, I was about to say it's kind of human nature though. We want to pigeonhole things, right? We want to categorize things in a certain, either extraterrestrial, ghostly, interdimensional, whatever the case may be. It's kind of our nature though to also want to kind of pigeonhole those things.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, again, this goes back to what I was saying, earlier with people having their knowing what their daily activities are without thinking about anything else. Is that we want you get a flat tire, you want to know why you got a flat tire. All right. Something's eating all the vegetables in your garden, you want to get out there and trap it and see what it is. So naturally, you want to know if you've had. It's like this one case. This bartender was working at a bar, and it was after hours. He was cleaning up when a couple of people came in, and he said that he could serve them, but they were going to be closing completely in about 15 minutes. But these people started asking him all kinds of just bizarre, off the cuff questions. The girl was kind of dressed like, as he put it, almost like a hippie with long hair, but both of them appeared to be kind of a little bit out of it. And at first he attributed it, they've been bar hopping or something, or maybe they were on drugs. But at one point, when he gave them their drinks, which they never drank, by the way, he got a whiff of them, and he said that they smelled like formaldehyde. And he said that he had worked at one time in a funeral home, and he says that's what they smelled like. They smelled like formaldehyde. And he also then started to get the impression that there was something wrong about them. They didn't look right. And this is something that we hear a lot with these encounters, that people say that they may have the appearance of being a normal person, but there is something about them that doesn't look real. Um, and of course, the mannerisms, like I've said before, mannerisms are off. Dress types of clothes, maybe old fashioned, or just kind of bizarre. One case where this couple was let into somebody's house, and they said that both of these people walked like their legs weren't attached properly to their hips. Like, instead of coming down from their hips, that they were attached on their sides, almost like a doll or a puppet. And that's the way that they walked, like they were a puppet. and that their mannerisms didn't seem right, proper. So that's the types of different cases that we're dealing with here, with this feeling that people get when they have these experiences, is that they're not dealing with something human. It's that uncanny valley feeling, and I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but it came about when we've started to build, say, like robots that look human, and there's a certain point where, say, like a robot or an animated cartoon that uses computer generated effects, that they look so human that it's creepy. And the animated characters in the Polar Express, that movie, is a good example. A lot of people were left kind of disturbed by that, and I love that movie, by the way. But the eyes and the facial, I guess the maybe almost like plastic like look to the animation, it just gives people a creepy feeling, and we get that in a lot of these stories.
It's
This
funny. Yeah.
uncanny feeling. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that now that you say that, because I watched that movie with my son a year or two ago, and now Tom Hanks' character in the movie, now that I'm thinking back at it, and did kind of have a weird kind of mannerisms or movement appearance. Yeah, it was kind of bizarre, and that's so.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny because now I'm thinking back at that, and I think, yeah, it
Well,
kind of.
just Yeah. Well, just imagine if you were to encounter somebody like that on the street, who maybe, comes up and starts talking to you for whatever reason. And a lot of times, these kind of encounters, there is a almost an intimate knowledge that these things will have about you. Ask you about your loved ones, or tell you things like, 2 years from now, you're not going to live in that house anymore. You're going to live someplace else, or next week your uncle is going to be killed in a car crash, and all these things come true. So that's why people are really left not only mystified but extremely creeped out by these encounters.
Yeah, it's quite bizarre. Sure. I think, Tim, I heard you I want to say in a Coast interview just recently, where you also talked about Ingo Swann, who was a famous remote viewer.
Right.
And I don't know if you covered in the book, and kind of one of his experiences with remote viewing. How does that kind of tie in with the book and the Ingo Swann and remote viewing?
Right. Well, that's we do. I do cover this in the book. At one point, Ingo Swann was tasked by some intelligence service, and they never quite let on just exactly who they were, but they work for the U.S. Government, and he was given coordinates to a certain spot on the far side of the moon. And they didn't they didn't tell him any information. They just said, take a look, you use your remote viewing abilities and take a look at this specific area and tell us what you see. And so when he did this, he got the impression that there were structures on the moon, in this area, that appeared to be man-made, and I'll put quotation marks around it, and that he saw working outside on the surface of the moon what appeared to be um, perfectly normal-looking human beings, but sans clothes and spaceships. He said, from what he could see, it looked like naked people, working outside on these buildings on the moon. But he also got the impression that even though they looked human, that they weren't. That he used the word aliens, but he said that what does alien mean? They weren't human, even though they looked human. And then what kind of frightened him was that he realized that these things had become aware that he was watching them. And so he withdrew extremely fast, and then realized that his earthly handlers were well aware that there was something weird going on the moon, and I guess wanted his confirmation of it. But he was also told that they were happy that he withdrew when he did, because apparently there had been other attempts to remote view this area, and that once these things had begun to realize that there was a psychic looking at them, there were countermeasures against these psychics, but they never went into what these countermeasures were. But they implied that it probably, didn't end up well for these other remote viewers. All right, so take that then. I guess a couple of months later, when he was visiting friends in Los Angeles, he stopped at a local supermarket to buy some food, and his attention was drawn to this extremely, he said, extremely beautiful woman who was looking at avocados. And he said that this woman was wearing had very short booty shorts and a tank top, just beautiful long blonde hair, and wearing like heart-shaped sunglasses. And he said, he first noticed her because she was just so strikingly good looking, but then as he got a little closer to her, he suddenly realized that she wasn't human, that she possibly was an alien. And again, he said, again, what's an alien? But he felt that she wasn't human, and possibly along the same types that he saw on the far side of the moon. And so he once he realized that, he said he was filled with fear. Just this primitive type of fear, he said, just welled up inside of him, leaving him with the knowledge that this woman was extremely dangerous, and that if she discovered that he knew what she was, that it wouldn't be good for him. All right. And so he quickly left the supermarket and sat in the car with his friend in the parking lot, watching the front of this entrance. And when this woman left, he pointed her out to his friend and said, "What do you think about that woman there?" And his friend said, "Oh, yeah, she's really pretty. She's an alien, isn't she?" And he's like, "What? What makes you say that?" And he says, "Oh, you see them all over Los Angeles."
Wow.
But the main point, he said, was that if that this thing also had mental psychic abilities, and that if she became aware of his, that he would be attacked somehow. He never said, how he thought it would happen, but he just felt that it was extremely dangerous to be around this person. And, and again, we go back to, the other cases that we examine in this book. You get that same kind of scenario, maybe not the impression that somebody, is dealing with extraterrestrials, but that feeling that you're dealing with something very dangerous. This almost primitive type of fear that wells up inside, that elicits that fight or flight response. And at one point in this book, I speculate that there could be a smell aspect, that on an unconscious level, maybe these things don't smell quite right. That, but just enough that it works on that primitive part of your brain that I suppose that. Yeah, well, I suppose that part of your brain that, when we were hunter gatherers, and you were out in the woods and you suddenly caught a whiff of a dangerous predator, it would raise the hackles on the back of your neck. and you knew that there was something dangerous there, and you better get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. That's what a lot of people who have these experiences with the others feel, that this is a dangerous situation and I need to get away as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's that's fascinating.
And
Yeah,
and not
yeah,
not all the time too, okay? Again, see, that's what makes all of this so mystifying, is that, I mean, it's just we have this broad spectrum of different cases and different reactions and different outcomes, which, again, can they all be thrown into one pot and then boiled down into, one grand theory or explanation? So far not, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the near future as well.
right. I want to talk about the reptilians. So there's talk about reptilian race, perhaps some say even living under the earth, shapeshifter type beings. You
Mhm.
want to call them extraterrestrial? I guess if they're living among us, they would be more terrestrial. That are shapeshifting and perhaps have fully integrated into our society in some sense. Any talk about those, or just perhaps terrestrial beings that are not us that have fully integrated in with us?
Right. Well, for those out there who have heard, like over the years about the whole reptilian race and agenda, some of them have it that, like the royalty or different political groups are actually reptilians and in disguise. Just throw all of that out, okay? I think all of that is just pretty much, you know, uh, I'm not going to use bad language to describe it, but
On the fringe, right?
yeah, which is, I mean, a lot of people listening to this will like, okay, you say that's out of the fringe, but what's the stuff you've just been talking about? Um, but again, see, that is something that is also a part of all of this. You go back into, you use the Bible and ancient Babylonian texts and stuff, where you have intelligent reptile type creatures interacting with us. In Genesis, you have the serpent that talked to Eve and convinced her to eat the apple and all that. I mean, of course, that's all just a mythology that was lifted from Babylon and some of the other places. But it's not the only example of reptile type beings interacting and instructing people. And so you bring that up into modern times. A lot of it really, I think, surfaced more after the original version of the TV series V came out, which had, the friendly extraterrestrials, beautiful extraterrestrials who came to take us all into a technological paradise, but they actually were evil reptiles that were wanting to eat us and our pets. And so after, gosh, when was that? I think that came out in the 70s, the original series. You started to see more and more of that coming out within especially the UFO mythology. So you're seeing again this very interesting um, things that were experienced and written about in the past in various mythologies and lore, then cleaned up and given a new modern edge, as a more scientific edge. So now you have these reptilians who, some say that they were the original race on the planet, and that maybe sometime along the lines they left the planet to explore the stars, and then came back later and found the place overrun by talking monkeys, and they're really honked off and they want their planet back. To Again, this comes from people like Paul Eno, where there's the possibility of multiple realities, that the whole idea of the multiverse is real, and that there are realities that have intelligent reptilians, and somehow they're able to occasionally cross that barrier and and interact with us. So now you take that again to part of the UFO mystery, which this aspect of it started in the 1940s with people like Richard Shaver, who talked about a group of original inhabitants on the planet in antediluvian times who went underground for whatever reason, that some of them were of a reptilian nature and have remained underground ever since, bedeviling us, working with us, what have you. Again, this is kind of a modern mythology using ancient ideas. And so we have one chapter in this book that was written by Philip Kinsella, where various people came into association with a guy named David Daniels, who claimed to be a shape-shifting reptilian. And you'd have to read the chapter because it's a very extensive chapter and very detailed. But there were a number of people who had no connections with each other, who had encounters with this man and were left extremely perplexed about who this person was, what this person was. A couple people claimed that this man actually partially shapeshifted in front of them, losing his human disguise and showing at least partially his reptilian side to them. And of course, there are other aspects to this story that makes it very weird and very perplexing. But again, the listeners are going to have to read the chapter for themselves to get a full viewpoint of what's going on. So again, Curry, it's a situation that, are we dealing with actual reptilian beings, or are we dealing with something who is disguising itself as reptilian beings, as human beings, as fairies, elves, gods, demons, what have you. But that's why we're here, talking about this today. We don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know we're kind of getting a little bit short on time. I guess one of the final questions I want to ask is, whoever these others are among us, do they seem to be of superior intelligence and always kind of one step ahead of us?
It does seem like that they're always one step ahead of us, which again, I mean, brings into that paranormal aspect of at least parts of this phenomenon. It's very much, and again, I'll bring up the poltergeist phenomena. One of the interesting things about poltergeist phenomena is that it it always seems to be one step ahead of what people are going to do in a household. It seems to know what people are thinking. It seems to know. It seems to anticipate what people are going to do, and you see this also with people dealing with the mimics and the others, that whether or not this is indicative of a superior intelligence, or some kind of psychic abilities, or even if you're dealing with something that can be outside of time and space, all right, whose possible natural habitat is not within our reality, but can actually go beyond that and have a clear view of the past, the present, and the future, especially when dealing with individuals. And again, we have seen this with with cases, say like with the Men in Black, or people, and the strange visitors on your doorsteps type of things, where there is a very personal, almost intimate knowledge of the person that they're dealing with. So I suspect that at least a partial answer, to your question, is that there are some of these things that have the ability to take themselves outside of what we would call our reality, and to actually have a clear view of the past, present, and future, and then work with that for whatever reason. There's, like I said before, there's a very tricksterous aspect to this phenomena. A lot of times there doesn't appear to be any rhyme or reason why these encounters are happening, with the exception that somebody's getting a good laugh out of it somewhere.
Right, and that's I mentioned it is fascinating, but yet it's also kind of a bit perplexing, and even a little bit kind of, it's almost a little bit frightening to think about, all kind of wrapped up into one. And so it definitely kind of leaves you guessing. I mean, there's so many possibilities here. What is exactly going on here? And like you said, maybe we don't ever find out what's going on. It's just kind of one of those mysterious things. And you know, I like to think of the paranormal as anything kind of outside the normal scientific understanding of things. So perhaps all this stuff could really be considered paranormal, but maybe we're not meant to know. I don't know, but this stuff is all really, really certainly perplexing, but also fascinating as well.
Well, the main takeaway, I think, for people to consider with this book is that we're probably not alone on this planet, that human beings are not the top of the ladder, so to speak, that there are other things that are just as intelligent, maybe more so than us, uh, possibly, physical, paranormal, interdimensional, all of the above. But again, we're not alone.
Right. Yeah. And a great discussion. Tim, I really appreciate you joining me on the show. Talk about where people are going to be able to find the book, find out more about you and some of the work you do.
Right. Well, this book mimics the others among us, can be found on Amazon.com, and we're working to also get it into your favorite local bookstores as well. If you don't see it, ask for it, and hopefully they'll be able to get your copy. But Amazon, both physical and ebook, it is available. And my website is conspiracyjournal.com, and as I like to say, where we have all the weird news and information that they don't want you to know.
All right. Great. Hey, once again, Tim, thank you for spending the time with me, and have a great what's left of the rest of your night.
My pleasure, Curry. I had a great time talking with you, and I hope your listeners enjoyed it as well.